Mubarak was thrust onto the international stage in October of 1981. He was mostly unhurt, despite the fact that he sat next to then-President Anwar Sadat as he was gunned down in a hail of bullets. 7 days later, Mubarak was Egypt's president, a position he would hold for nearly 30 years. Mubarak rose to prominence in the Air Force, becoming vice president in 1975. Throughout his tenure, he was America's closest ally in the Arab world, but his continued crackdown on the Islamic opposition nearly brought him the same fate as Sadat. In 1995, he survived an assassination attempt in Ethiopia. 10 years later, Mubarak won Egypt's first ever presidential election, a move nearly guaranteed after key opponents were jailed.
It's as if something has been unleashed. Egypt hasn't seen protests like these in years. But after the example of Tunisia, suddenly they've lost their fear.
This is enough for Egypt. We want democracy here in Egypt. We want our war to be high. We need Hosni Mubarak leave Egypt. Now we stay 30 years and there is no change.
At first, the police seemed to step aside, wrong-footed by the size of the demonstration. Then they moved in.
Unprecedented in the history of the internet, Egypt shuts down services on a second day of planned countrywide anti-government protests. Power driven by a new breed of people across all sectors seems unstoppable. Has the Tunisian phenomenon spread to Egypt? What do these mainly young Egyptians want? How do they plan to achieve their objectives?
A crowd of protesters break through a line of riot police in the center of Cairo. Demonstrators have taken to the streets across Egypt in what has been called a day of anger.
People have been dealing with all sorts of injuries, from gunshot wounds to rubber bullets to stone injuries, all sorts of traumas.
These people now is very angry about what he say. Nobody accepts what he say. Today is not a choice for him. He have to say, I'm going. Tomorrow, he have to go, no go, he go. He catch him tomorrow. If he stays in this country tomorrow, people go catch him and he charge him about what he did. Because now no more choice.
History in the making. The Egyptian people's uprising is a turning point that's likely to change the face of the Middle East. But can it also mark a new chapter in the US approach to and vision of the region?
We're as outraged as Egyptians because this is totally unacceptable and this is not a way to fight the uprising in Egypt.
The anger of grieving Egyptians clamouring for an opportunity to tell the world they want a new president.
Egyptian revolution is in the balance. I don't know the next hours and days will be decided not just the fate of the great people of Egypt, the beating heart of the Arab world, 80 millions.
Protesters have gathered in the heart of Buenos Aires to denounce the Egyptian government led by Hosni Mubarak. Socialist and human rights groups took to the streets in front of the Argentine Department of Foreign Affairs.
Former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak denies he abused his authority to amass wealth and property in a speech broadcast Sunday. The pre-recorded speech was Mubarak's first public comment since his ouster February 18th.
How Israel will cope with the new developments is too soon to tell. But what is abundantly clear is that without Egypt, Israel will lose one of its main allies.
We had a lot to do with Mubarak being in power and staying in power. Like, we subsidize him, we own him. He's our puppet dictator. He does what we tell him.
Mubarak went on nationwide TV to announce he's handing some authority to his vice president and seeking some changes to the constitution.
at the bottom of the screen, very interesting, some security forces have left their posts and joined the protesters. We've seen that also happen in Tunisia, where the army, the security forces, joined the ranks of the protesters in the final days.
This is the moment many in Egypt have been waiting for. President Hosni Mubarak has stepped down and handed control to the military. That triggered massive celebrations across the country, especially in Cairo, where throngs of people have been demanding his ouster for weeks. The recently appointed vice president made the announcement just after nightfall on national TV. He said that in these, quote, grave circumstances, unquote, Mubarak has decided to leave his position and let the military run the nation.
الشباب مش هيغير وده احنا غيرنا وثبتنا